So hello and welcome to Gerety Talks. My name is Lucia Ongai and I am the co-founder of Gerety Awards. Just like the award, this series will put in the spotlight some of the industry's true change makers with the aim to drive progress within the industry in a global scale. Today we have three very special guests all the way from the US. Bernice Chao, creative director at RGA. She believes in the power of using creativity for good and has worked for clients in a broad range of industries like Google, Airbnb, Nissan, and HBO. She's been listed on Think LA's Top Women of Color in Advertising. She's a teacher and mentor and donates her time to several nonprofit projects like TED Culver City, Green Wall Campaign, and Lightbringer Project. And she is part of the Gerety executive jury for this year in the US. Welcome, Bernice. Thanks for joining us. Then we have Melissa Ditson, who joined MRM in 2019 as Chief Creative Officer of the US West Office to define the creative vision and deliver creative excellence for their clients like Cisco, Microsoft, Panasonic, Verizon, and many more. Her award-winning career has spanned 20 years leading agencies and building diverse creative teams in London and New York. She was shortlisted for the Drum Creative Women of the Year in 2017 and named one of Marcom's Magnificent Women in 2019. And she was Gerety jury in 2019. Welcome, Melissa. Thanks for joining us. Just the same as our last guest, Bianca Guimaraes, who was also part of our jury in 2019, who joined Mischief No Fixed Address last July as Executive Creative Director and founding partner, and in the space of just a few months made global noise with prominent campaigns. She's behind Emmy-winning creative work like Back to School Essentials by Sandy Hook Promise. She was named Business Insider's 30 Most Creative People in Advertising Under 30 in 2012, 2015, and 2016. Shots Magazine selected her for their inaugural list of rising stars, and that week included her among its Creative 100. So welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us for this Gerety talk about American creativity. So we will go with the first question. Do you think there are certain characteristics that make American advertising different to others? Is there something specific and immediately recognizable in campaigns from the USA? Who would like to start?
I can start.
Okay.
I haven't worked internationally, but just kind of seeing from the outside, I feel like they're a lot more risk-taking and storytelling. I remember when I was working on like the PlayStation Sony launch, I remember seeing a lot of the European work that was happening at the same time. And I kept going, wow, look how like cool and exciting and different that is. And I felt like the stuff we did was probably a little safer. Like we're like, we can't go that crazy. We can't go that sexy. I remember we had a lot more limitations. So that's, for me, that's kind of the big difference.
I relate to that. I'm from Brazil and I worked there a little bit for a couple years in the beginning of my career. So it's, I remember having the same impressions, and then just mostly from today, from seeing like work from there and seeing like, oh, we can never get away with this, you know, like here in the US, or like the rules seem to be a little different when it comes to also like you see some, you know, using big names or like characters and stuff, and you're like, wait, how would they paid for the, you know, royalties of this? And it's like, oh, maybe they like it's just different there or something.
Yeah, I agree. Having worked in London and New York, and yeah, I think the market's so much bigger in the US, right? So the stakes are higher, the media budgets are bigger. So I think, yeah, taking a small risk has a much bigger impact. So I definitely agree.
And was it very different for you, Melissa, between the UK and working in the US?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our clients, because I was recently back in London working with clients like Lidl, Burger King. Lidl's like a challenger brand in the UK. Their big rivals Aldi, which is in the US, so you might have heard them. But yeah, they were always looking to take risks, whereas I don't hear that as much from clients here. It's not like, what can we do that's really going to try and break the category, or get people talking. I mean, brands want people talking, but how do you do it in a safer, more controlled way? I think is typically the conversation with clients here in the US.
Okay. And what is your all favorite American campaign? Your all-time favorite American campaign?
That's a tough question. I have so many. I have so many. I mean, for me, it's typically not ads, like traditional TV ads that I remember. Like I love, and the things that stick with me and come to mind are things that brands do. So brand acts. I think some of my top hits are Fearless Girl. I just think is such a powerful brand statement, and it just the way that it affected people and the impact that it had on culture is just so huge. And there are many more from years gone, but I'll let the other ladies chime in.
I had a student today, last week, talk to me about how she was trying to go from screenwriting or maybe advertising, and for some reason advertising just didn't sit well with her. Mm-hmm. And one of the campaigns that I really like is the Real Beauty campaign by Dove, because it is like a brand took action, right? This is something that, for a lot of us, we're like, oh yeah, why does advertising women have to look one way, right? One age, one size, one color, right? And this is a real brand that took like a huge action on that. And I think subsequently, a lot of other brands had to then step up and be like, hey, we're about this too. But it's just so nice that and then I also love that, two, amazing female creatives also worked on that too. It just shows that having different points of view in advertising makes such a difference. So that's one of my favorites.
I also feel like the Dove Real Beauty sketches, like they kind of like kicked off this new trend in advertising of doing those kinds of like stunty ideas, or like a lot of like after that there were a lot of different shades of that same format of ideas. It's very cool to see ideas like that change the way people start thinking about advertising. I like that too. Yeah, it's a very tricky question. I feel like there is I think about campaigns that actually have been making a brand famous for like years, and they keep like doing amazing stuff like over and over and over. And it's like Snickers, with the "You're not you when you're hungry," and you see like it's like how do they keep doing like another building on that same platform, the same campaign, and keep doing like amazing stuff, like being the hunger rhythm, which is like they're not just doing the funny TV spot that you eat the bar and now you're like yourself again. It's like they're just always finding new ways to deliver on that same brand platform, which is amazing. And the same goes to I feel like the same applies to Labreeze, like with the I think it's been like 4 or 5 years that we keep seeing like their new campaign, and it's better than the previous one, or as good as the previous one. So it's it's pretty cool when that happens. Sometimes you see one campaign from a brand and it's like, oh, that was pretty cool and very interesting, and then like some other stuff is sort of doesn't get that much attention. But with these brands that I mentioned, it just feels like it's always kind of like getting attention and getting recognition, which is cool.
Do you think it's a big challenge to have this thing that you have a campaign running or an idea running for so long and it keeps working? Is that something that happens or is it an exception? What do you think?
I think it's a pretty big challenge just to like it's I worked at BBDO on Snickers before, and it's like when you get one of those briefs, you're like, oh man, they already did everything, and the bar is so high. So I feel like same with like other brands like Old Spice. So you could sometimes it's more interesting to, or it's easier to do something like breakthrough and amazing for a brand that hasn't done it before than a brand that like keeps doing. So I think it's very challenging, creatively speaking.
Okay. And which campaigns have you been most excited by in the past 12 months, and why? Well, it's been like quite interesting 12 months, right? a very unique 12 months.
I've got one because I've been spending a lot of time actually looking at the feminine care category. You know, funny that you mentioned Bernice, like they've just been doing such amazing work as a brand. But I think one piece that really stood out was actually a piece of your work, Bianca, the menstruation ad. I love it. I think it was so refreshing and just so funny, and you know, such a truth that you brought to life in such a clever way. So that's one that's really stood out for me. And I just think that category, there's so much work to be done, right? There's so much opportunity creatively. And we're scratching the surface there. But yeah, I've been spending a lot of time looking at work there because we're working with a little startup organic tampon brand called Tampon Tribe at MRM. So yeah, it's been fun. But that one definitely caught my attention. It's a great piece of work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been like the past year, I feel like we've seen a lot of heavy or I guess emotional and like some stuff that was like reminding us of like the moment we're living and the pandemic and how things were hard. So like just one that came to mind now was like the Dr. Rick's you know, spot for Progressive, and just work that makes you laugh and like forget. It's like it's okay to laugh now. It's okay to still have fun. Like brands need to like go back to creating work that people can just have like just have positive, you know, like a sorry, just like a laugh and think it's like, oh, this is pretty stupid, or this is pretty funny, or it's like, oh, it's a good insight. Obviously, it's, you know, with that, it's like it's a real insight. Like, you know, the writing is very good, but it's just refreshing when you look at that stuff and you're like, it's funny, and it makes me not have to lean on the moment we're leaving, and it feels like it makes us think that it's okay to have fun now. Let's go back to having fun and not have to be like, you know, so serious.
For me, I think it's not like an actual brand did it. This group of creatives basically came up with Let's Grab Coffee. Um, you know, out of this pandemic, a lot of people are out of jobs. And the thing is, you know, and with the BLM movement, a lot of recruiters were saying that they can't find people of color to work in advertising. So a group of people just on the side decided to hack LinkedIn and create their own fake company called Coffee. And they, you know, made it so it's like C0FFE3. So it's like you had to type it really specifically. So then when recruiters search coffee, they're going to get like a list of people that work for this company, you know, that are different. And I've seen so many students actually have a lot of success with this. And it's just so interesting that just like, you know, everyday people can make such a big difference in the industry with just like, you know, something that we already use. I just thought it was so clever that it was a hack of an existing platform. And I've actually had a lot of juniors or, you know, students reach out to me just to talk to people that, you know, are different, you know. I think I've never had a mentor that was a person of color that was a female. And I think a lot of other females feel the same way. So I got a lot of like random LinkedIn messages to just like talk and have, you know, a side coffee. So I thought that was a really cool, you know, piece that kind of came out of the need.
Yeah.
That reminded me of it's similar. It's not like from the past year, but I think Mother did the maternity pause, or I forget exactly like what was the name of it. But instead of looking weird that women were maybe like, you know, out of a job for like a year, if they choose to actually like, you know, take time, or 2 years, and people might think like, you know, that's a weird thing. I don't want to hire someone that like, why would they were out of job, and you could actually put that instead on your LinkedIn, which is another cool like hack that was pretty well done.
And Bernice, talking about students, we're mentioning students. I read, among other things, you're a teacher and lecturer. So what do you think are the most important skills someone that works in advertising needs to develop today?
I think it's important for anybody in advertising to have a, you know, kind of a strategic background, insights, right? To get to the answer quicker and be able to support the work. So like 3 years ago, I was on a panel for Think LA and I met the code director for LMU M School. And at that point, their advertising program was just strategy. And I was telling him kind of like, you know, it's so crazy that there's so many advertising schools in Los Angeles, but I look at their books for creatives and I'm like, sometimes they're not just as strong as some people that come out of like maybe a Miami ad school in San Francisco or a circus. And I was like, you know, people are paying so much to go to these portfolio schools, and it's just such a, you know, it's terrible that, you know, their book isn't ready, you know, that they still maybe need to go to a portfolio center or some kind of night class to get their book better, because they're lacking really strong strategic pulls. And so we talked about kind of creating a creative department to back his strategy department. So last year they actually doubled the program, and instead of having 25 students enter for just strategy, they actually had 50 students enter, 25 for creative and 25 for strategy. And so now I actually teach that capstone course. So their seniors actually have a, you know, a really strong understanding of creative, and to go look through their portfolio again and just kind of support it better, as well as work with strategy students in a small team. So they're in teams of 4, and they're actually competing for the FE's collegiate right now. And they're so bright that I think, you know, we actually have a really good chance. So for me, it's getting to that strategy insight, learning to figure out how to research, find the data, find all that stuff for yourself, not waiting for other people on your team or not waiting for your client to give that to you.
Great. And you're also involved in TED. Can you tell us about that and how it relates to your advertising career?
Yeah, so I've been involved with TEDx, the Culver City chapter, for the last 6.5 years. We've already organized about 9 events. The pandemic definitely slowed us down. We had an event scheduled like 2 weeks into the pandemic that we actually had to postpone. But yeah, I started as a huge fan of TED Talks, you know, so many people are. But for me today, the biggest draw is just to meet some super smart people in the community that are outside of advertising and just getting exposed to different genres. You know, I had a speaker that talked about, you know, using African rats to, you know, basically detect landmines safely. You know, him creating that technology all by himself, or an artist that, you know, actually like goes to the border and actually gives new clothes in exchange for their old clothes. Like he'll give you like a 2-for-1 just so you can use it for art to then raise awareness about what they have to go through. So it's like you're getting all these really interesting perspectives that I think sometimes when you're in advertising so much, you're kind of just in one headspace. It's really nice to kind of hear different points of view.
Great. And Melissa, I read in your bio, you also love to make time for student portfolio reviews. So the same question I made to Bernice, what do you think are the most important skills someone that works in advertising needs to develop today?
Yeah, I think it's so tough. And I mean, you know, studying creativity, if you're studying your craft, whether it's writing or design or art direction, like you have to be an expert there. But then when you come into the industry, you have to, I think it's so important to learn all the different sides of the business. So, you know, for example, MRM, we have, you know, we've got UX as part of creative. You've got media, which is such a big piece, like the data, right? Like you have to understand strategy, to your point, Bernice, is such a big part of creativity. So yeah, quickly becoming an expert or learning as much as you can about all of the different disciplines that you know make great work, because without that you really can't deliver on, you know, work that's going to be successful in today's age. So yeah, it's tough these days coming in to the industry, but I think, you know, just having that appetite and the curiosity to learn and just be open to absorbing it all.
And you helped launch a global movement to demand attention for girls' education with Michelle Obama's initiative, Let Girls Learn. Can you tell us about how the campaign 62 Million Girls was conceived?
Yes, yeah, that was an emotional journey for sure, and it happened very quickly. It's not often you get a call from the White House to help raise awareness for, you know, the First Lady is one of her passions, and it was tough. Like when we got that call and the brief, you know, girls' education really wasn't it wasn't on the map. I know that sounds awful, but it was really seen as a soft issue. I just remember, you know, doing my initial research and getting so emotional, like sobbing, you know, watching these videos and learning about the lack of education and access to education and the impact. And it was tough because we had to raise awareness of such a big problem, but also part of part of Michelle Obama's brief was, how do you make kids in America realize, realize how important their education is, and what they have access to, and how lucky they are, so raising awareness of this really big problem, but also making it, inspiring people to learn about it and understand it, and then share that and participate. So it's that was an amazing journey. It was a great piece of work to be involved in.
Are you still in touch with the ex-first lady?
But no. No. It was pretty impressive though. I remember like the moment we were on the press conference, the White House was holding a press conference to brief everyone that was going to be helping to promote this. And I mean, there were hundreds, thousands of people on this. And I was like, oh, wow, this is big. Like, this is huge, having, creating a platform for one of her initiatives. And it was, it's tough because she had campaigns that had been out previously that just hadn't had, gotten the traction that this one, this idea did. So it was pretty special to be a part of that.
Right. And Bianca, I read in an article, after interning in various agencies in your hometown, Sao Paulo in Brazil, you moved to New York with 2 suitcases and a pair of Havaianas. Do you remember what first struck you about New York and the US, and what were the main cultural differences you found compared to working in Brazil?
Sorry, what was the first part of the question? It was a little hard to hear.
That you were interning in various agencies in your hometown, and you arrived in New York. And do you remember what first struck you about New York and the US, and what are the differences?
Yeah. I mean, for me, when I first arrived, I was, that was 11 years ago, and I had been working in Brazil for a couple of years, partly as like an intern, and then like I was already full-time for I guess a year and a half. But it almost felt like it felt different, maybe because at the time I didn't go to portfolio school, and I felt like everybody everybody like around me had gone, and they had like this specific, they knew how to think, they knew the process, it just felt like they knew there was I had to almost catch up to the way they, that they were like working, solving briefs. And it was almost like I didn't think that you could learn how to do that stuff, it just came with you. But no, like I felt like it's like, no, there's a way to, you learn that. And I did a little catch up. I mean, the language was definitely a little bit of a barrier. I knew how to speak English, but still like being creative or like brainstorming and talking about ideas is such a big, it's very about your opinion and expression and talking about you, like how you feel. And I would miss the timing of jokes. I would not understand things. I remember being, briefed, my first brief was at JWT at the time. It was Pepsid, and I thought it was Pepsi. So because like I just heard and I couldn't tell the difference, and we were talking about heartburn, and I'm like, why are we talking about heartburn and Pepsi the drink? Like, so anyway, like there was a lot of that in the beginning, but in general, it was like a learning process, and I think if I had worked for longer in Brazil, I would probably be able to talk, and like it's a more senior creative, I would be able to like point out differences, I think, in better. But for me, it was just, I was still learning, and it was still the beginning that those are kind of like the impressions that come to mind right now.
And your bio reads that you left your cozy job to do something incredibly bold, which is help launch a new creative agency in the middle of a pandemic. How was that experience? And do you think the context in which you made this decision makes you more brave?
Well, it almost feels like that was such a crazy thing to do, to like, leave my old job and like start an agency in the middle of a pandemic. But actually it almost felt like the best, it didn't feel like so crazy. It felt like the answer was kind of obvious in a way. You know, everybody's working remotely, everybody's having to like, you know, adapt how they're working. So it was almost natural. Obviously, the part of the team are people that I already knew and that I was comfortable working with. So you know, that chemistry really helped when it comes to like, oh, you know, starting something new. But still, to the date, we have like, there are a few of us that haven't met in person, or a lot of us. So like we've been working together. We opened you know, the agents together, and we haven't like, we don't know, you know, what shoes each other's like wear. We haven't seen each other's feet, I guess, because we've seen this part, but we don't know how tall we are, kind of thing. Like we joke about when, you know, when are we gonna meet. It will be like our sort of officially you know, the launch of the agency. But it was it felt right for the times that we're living. We could, you know, point to a bunch of things that we didn't think were working properly in general in the process, things that should be you know, being more nimble and streamlining things. And you don't really need, you know, 50 people in a room to get to the right answer. And we're just kind of COVID acted as the proof point of all of that for us in this journey. And it's been going pretty well.
And let's talk a little bit about politics. So you have a brand new president in the US. What are your expectations for the next 4 years? Have you thought about that?
It feels
Quiet.
Calm for the first time. It's
say, like, yeah.
It's such a relief. I think one of my most responded to Insta story was just like, did you guys all take that collective breath? It's just such a sigh of relief. I think, you know, with the pandemic at this time, it just feels like there's now, you know, an actual plan, and that we're actually going to get back to a normal, and it's just such a relief. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to not waking up to like have to see the latest tweet that was like insane or some like crazy news. I just feel like, let's just go back to normal and quiet a little bit.
Yeah.
And talking about the US elections, Bianca, your agency launched a campaign for Represent Us called Dictators. Can you tell us about this campaign?
Yeah. I mean, we all know like how, you know, how much we needed people to go vote, you know, work the polls, just in general, how noisy that time was. So we need, when Represent Us asked us to help them get people to act, and we really started talking about the fragility of democracy and how it is more fragile than we think. We think it's already like established and we have democracy and that's it, but it's not really like that. And if, you know, what we were doing basically, which was not much, was putting it in jeopardy. And we wanted to show people and like shake them out of complacency and make sure that they know that if you don't do anything, you might, you know, become, you know, we might lose democracy and you might become some other country. And that's kind of the approach that we took, of viewing it from the outside in, and almost using that reverse psychology of like, just keep doing what you're doing, which is nothing, and we'll be good, to make people be like, what? Like, no, I'm gonna do something, like I'm gonna go vote, and then you know, I'm gonna take ownership. And but yeah, the goal was really to show democracy is more fragile than you think, and using those leaders from like, you know, other countries that don't have democracy, to show that, you know, we need to do something if we don't want to become like them.
And do you have any idea about the impact that it had, if you had more people going to vote? Or
yeah, I mean, we still have democracy, which is a good thing. Not saying that the campaign made us have democracy necessarily, but no, Represent Us, the metrics were very good around the campaign. Like Represent Us in general, they had like, you know, it was they've done like a lot of efforts with celebrities and in general, and this campaign was the one that generated the most engagement and like got people to like it doubled or tripled, I forget exactly, like the amount of people to their site to actually sign up to, you know, do the things that, you know, sign up to vote, to work the polls or to vote. So there was you know, the results were pretty great. And so it, you know, had some impact. It's just hard to measure, like, you know, how much of an impact in that sense of like people voting and democracy still being here. But yeah.
Well, that's good. Like you said, democracy is still there, so kind of good. And let's go with the last question for the three of you. So after Epic 2020, what do you expect to find for this year, and what kind of stories or ideas would you like to see and brands to tell us?
It's a big question.
Yeah.
I think something you said earlier, Melissa, I hope there's more humor, you know, I hope there's more levity. I know there's going to be a wave of, you know, probably healing stories and, you know, that, but it'll be just nice to kind of get back to a place where we can all smile. I think will be really great to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's amazing to see, you know, it hasn't stopped. I think, you know, Bianca, you were saying there was a lot of, you know, the COVID work, right? That was all about the moment. And, you know, I think the industry quickly got back to just doing work that feels normal and funny and, you know, doing what we do, right? So yeah, I just think it'll be interesting. I think the landscape, the agency landscape's changing. So it'll be interesting to see what shakes out of that and the work that comes out of this, you know, once we do get back into the office and are able to collaborate again in real life and meet our new teams, to your point, Bianca. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think in general, just hopefully brands, you know, or we have the right to keep being fun, like you're saying, or doing things that are fun and don't get so like scrutinized and like, you know, they don't feel like they're under the microscope, because now it feels like anything that you do, you know, there's like people find an angle to kind of criticize or to see why it wasn't right. And I think it kind of reflects a little bit the moment, like how, you know, the anxiety and how the moment that we're living. But yeah, I think hopefully we just go back to like just thinking something is stupid and fun, or really like, or still like emotional, you know, heartwarming, whatever the feelings are, but just without like so much of like being worried about everything being under a microscope and being criticized. And, you know, the what we were seeing with like a lot of work that was out this year.
Well, I hope you're right, and that we get to see many funny and amazing campaigns this year as well. So thank you very much for the three of you to joining us for the Gerety Talk about American creativity, and for telling us your insights and your opinions. And hope you have a great year. And thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.